this is actually one of the areas of research that my reading of the literature says we really don't have very good answers. The work that Lois Harris and I have done suggests to us, and it's an inference rather than an empirically tested conclusion, that if you begin with really quite young children around concrete, practical, observable tasks. There's been one study done where children have been asked to predict, a kind of self-assessment, how many balls they can throw into the basket. And children will make big numbers and then perform poorly. And that evidence is not processed by the kid into a more realistic but pessimistic estimation. They still think they can do 10 and they still can't do it. So somehow that evidence is not being translated by the kid into a more realistic self-estimate. And that, I think, gives us the basis to say, how do we be realistic about ourselves rather than overly optimistic? Of course, the challenge is, if we're truly very pessimistic, we'd find it hard to get out of bed in the morning and go to work and go to school. So we have to be inherently optimistic about things will be better and I can cope. And I don't want to destroy that, but I want them to learn around schoolwork of how to judge myself better. Now, one of the things we do in school is we have lots of objectively scored quizzes and practice tests, like word spelling lists we give kids to do and times tables. And one of the techniques known as judgment of learning is to say, now that we've had this week, before you do the test, how many do you think you'll get right? And then you could reward people not for were they right, but for how close was their estimate to their actual. And you start to reward people for starting to predict closer to what they actually achieve. The tension with that, of course, is that if you start to adjust people's expectations to their reality, expectation research that Christine Ruby Davies and her colleagues are doing would suggest that you're lowering expectations so you get lower achievement. So this is a challenge to the field that research has not been done around. Nonetheless, I would start with the goal being not how high did you get, but how realistic was your estimate or your self-assessment. And I would do prediction of practical objective tasks as the first beginning point. Would I exclude that how do you feel at the end of doing this? I don't think I would exclude that, but I wouldn't say that that's a very useful self-assessment. The smiley face of, oh, this made me feel really good. I think one of the things that we saw in one of the studies we've published a few years ago now is where a student self-assessed on their bookwork and said, I really don't understand this. And then the teacher wrote, but you've done really well. The student was right, but the teacher didn't engage with that. So when kids say they're not doing well, does that mean the teacher needs to fix their self-esteem? I think the teacher needs to say, it's not a self-esteem issue, it's a competence issue. So, so tell me more about what parts of it you found hard and what you didn't get that I might be able to address, rather than, oh no, panicking because now the kid feels bad about themselves. I think kids understand that teachers are not their mothers, and that your mother's job might be to make you feel good about yourself, but my teacher's job is to help me learn how to be better. And if the teacher substitutes making me feel good instead of helping me learn, I think that would be counterproductive. And in fact, there's a really interesting study published more than nearly 20 years ago now, by Frank Paharis and his student Graham, they showed that the kids they studied in the U.S. knew the teachers were psychotherapizing them in their feedback, trying to make them feel good, when the kids said, what we really want is to be told how to get better. And that's an interesting challenge for a lot of teachers who feel like if a kid starts to mark themselves down, that must mean there's something emotionally wrong. As kids gain in experience, the research consistently shows, as kids gain in competence, experience, and expertise, they mark themselves more pessimistically, but more realistically. Their scores become closer to what a teacher would say or what a peer would say.